Today we're going to read Anne of Green Gables, chapter 5. Anne goes to church. Well, how do you like them? Asked Marilla. Anne looked down at the 3 new dresses that Marilla had made. I'll imagine that I like them, Anne said quietly. I don't want you to imagine it, Marilla said. I can see you don't like the dresses. What's the matter with them? They are not pretty, said Anne. Pretty indeed, Marilla said with a sniff. Those are good, sensible dresses without ruffles and frills. The brown gingham and the blue print will do for school. The black and white satin is for church and Sunday school. I will expect you to keep them neat and clean. I should think you would be grateful to get them after those rag things you have been wearing. Oh, I'm grateful, Anne said, but I just wish one of them had puff sleeves. Puff sleeves are so fashionable. Well, I think they look silly, Marilla said. I like dresses to be plain and sensible. Now hang them up carefully, then sit down and learn the Sunday school lessons for tomorrow. Marilla went back downstairs and looked at the dresses again and sighed. I did hope there would be a white one with puff sleeves, she whispered. I'll just have to imagine that one of them has lace frills and 3 puffs on each sleeves. The next morning, Marilla fell sick, so she couldn't take Anne to Sunday school. You'll have to go with Mrs. Lynde, she told Anne. Now behave yourself, don't stare at people, and don't fidget. Here's a penny for the collection. Anne started off down the lane. Along the way, she picked buttercups and wild roses. She made a big wreath of flowers and put it on her new plain sailor hat. Anne thought the flowers made her outfit look prettier. Mrs. Lynde wasn't home, so Anne went to the church alone. Well, how did you like Sunday school? Marilla asked when Anne came back home. Marilla did not see Anne's decorated hat. The flowers had faded, so Anne had dropped the wreath in the lane. I didn't like it a bit, Anne said. It was horrid. Anne surly, Marilla said. Mr. Bell's opening prayer was awfully long, Anne said, and all the girls in my class had puff sleeves except me. You shouldn't have been thinking about sleeves in Sunday school, Marilla said. I hope you knew your lesson. Oh, yes, Anne said. I answered a lot of questions. After Sunday school, Mrs. Rogerson showed me your pew in church. The sermon was long, too. The preacher wasn't very interesting, so I didn't listen much. Deep down, Marilla agreed with Anne about Mr. Bell's prayers and the minister's sermon. She knew she ought to scold Anne for not listening in church, but somehow she just couldn't bring herself to do it. On Friday, Marilla went to visit Mrs. Lynde. There she heard about the flowers on Anne's head. Anne, Marilla said when she came home, Mrs. Lynde says you went to church with roses and buttercups on your head. That was a silly thing to do, but lots of girls had flowers pinned on their dresses, Anne said. Don't answer me back, Anne, Marilla said. Mrs. Lynde says people talked about it, something dreadful. They must think I have no better sense than to let you go to church looking like that. Anne's eyes filled with tears. Oh, I'm so sorry. I never thought you would mind. Lots of the girls had flowers on their hats. Maybe you'd better send me back to the orphanage. That would be terrible. But it would be better than being a trial to you. Nonsense, Marilla said. I don't want you to send you back to the orphanage. I just want you to behave like other little girls. Don't cry anymore. I have got some good news for you. Diana Barry came home. I'm going to borrow a pattern from her mother. If you like, you can come with me to meet Diana. Anne stood up and clasped her hand. Oh, Marilla, I'm scared, she whispered. What if Diana doesn't like me? I'm sure Diana will like you, Marilla said. It's her mother you have got to please. I hope Mrs. Barry hasn't heard about the flowers on your hat. She won't know what to think of you. You must be polite and well behaved and don't say anything startling. Chapter 6. A new friend for Anne. Anne and Marilla walked over to Orchard Slope Farm. Marilla knocked on the kitchen door. Mrs. Barry came to the door. She was a tall woman with black hair and black eyes. How do you do, Marilla? She said. Come in. And this is the little girl you have adopted, I suppose. Yes, this is Anne Surley, said Marilla. Spelled with an E, said Anne. Mrs. Barry shook Anne's hand. How are you? She asked. I am well in body, Anne said, but I am very rumpled in spirit. Thank you. Ma'am, she turned to Marilla. That wasn't startling, was it? She whispered. Diana was sitting on the sofa reading a book. She dropped the book and smiled at Marilla and Anne. This is my little girl, Diana, said Mrs. Barry. Diana, why don't you take Anne out to the garden? You can show her your flowers. Anne and Diana went outside. They stood over a big clump of tiger lilies and gazed shyly at each other. Oh, Diana, Anne said, do you think you can like me a little, enough to be my best friend? Diana laughed. I guess so. She said, I'm awfully glad you came to live at Green Gables. It will be fun to have someone to play with. My sisters aren't big enough. Will you swear to be my best friend forever and ever? Anne asked. Diana looked shocked. It's very wicked to swear, she said. Oh no, not my kind of swearing, Anne said quickly. There are two kinds, you know. I have only heard of one kind of swearing, Diana said. My kind isn't wicked at all, Anne said. It just means vowing and promising. Well, I don't mind doing that, Diana said. How do you do it? Anne took hold of Diana's hand. We join hands like this, she said. It ought to be over running water. We'll just pretend this path is running water. I'll say the vow first, and continued. I swear to be faithful to my best friend Diana Barry as long as the sun and the moon shall shine. Now you say it and put my name in. Diana said the vow with a laugh. Then she said, You're a funny girl, Anne, but I think I'm going to like you very much. When Marilla and Anne started for home, Diana went with them as far as the brook. The girls promised to spend the next afternoon together. I'm the happiest girl on Prince Edward Island, Anne told Marilla. Diana and I are going to build a playhouse tomorrow. She's going to lend me a book to read and teach me a new song. I wish I had something to give Diana. Did you know that I'm an inch taller than she is? but she's ever so much fatter. Um, she said she would like to be thin, but I think she's just said that to make me feel bad. Well, I hope you don't talk Diana to death, said Marilla. And remember this, Anne, you're not going to play all the time. You'll have your chores to do, and chores comes first. Back at Green Gables, Matthew had a surprise for Anne. He pulled a small bag from his pocket and handed it to her. I heard you say you like chocolate candies, he said, so I got you some. Marilla said with a sniff. It'll ruin her teeth and stomach. There, child. Don't look so miserable. You can eat those since Matthew has gone and got them. Don't get sick eating them all at once. I won't, said Anne. I'll just eat one tonight and I can give half of them to Diana, can I? They will taste much better, sweeter, if I give her half. I'm so glad I have something to give her. I'll say this for the child, Marilla said when Anne had gone up to bed. She isn't stingy. Dear me, it's only 3 weeks since he came. I can't imagine the place without her. Don't be looking, I told you so, Matthew. I'll admit that I'm getting fond of her, but don't rub it in.